Hi guys, Alexa Dunn here, and today I am talking about one of the more sad things that can happen to you on your great publishing journey, and that is becoming an orphan. Not literally. Thankfully, my mother is alive and well. No parents were harmed in the making of this video, but being orphaned is what it's called when your editor leaves your publishing house. Specifically, this is the editor who bought your book, who loves your book baby as much as you do and has been shepherding you through the publishing process, or promised to shepherd you through the publishing process, because being orphaned can happen at any point in your publishing journey on your book, and depending on when it happens, it can be devastating or it can just be sad. I will tell you, I'm just sad, but it wasn't devastating for me. My situation of having my editor leave my publishing house could not have gone better, to be perfectly honest. It worked out perfectly well for me. I'm just sad because I really liked my editor. And the good news is that we are still friends, and she left my publishing house to become a literary agent. So if you are an aspiring or querying writer, I highly recommend her. Her name is Sarah Landis, and she is now a literary agent at Sterling Lord Literistic. But that is kind of the end of the story. Let's back it up. So I sold my book, or I got my offer in April of 2017, and my book deal, we closed and finalized everything in May, late May, early June with my contract. But I started working with my editor right away, so early April. We worked on content edits together and line edits, which I went over in my types of edits you do with a publishing house after a book deal video. We did content edits end of May through June. She sent me an edit letter. We talked on the phone, and we just get along so well. And she just got my book. Like she loved what I had already done, had really thoughtful suggestions for what I could make better. She understood and got my characters. I did something horrible to a character that she really loved, and she asked me to walk it back of the terrible thing that I had done to this person, and I just love that she loved someone in my book enough to ask me not to murder them. So my editor saved me from being a heinous murderer, which is always nice. And then we did line edits together, and she was just so easy to work with, and I felt this sense of calm that we were going to be a partnership in my debut journey, and also because I got a 2-book deal, so I knew that I'd be working with her on my second book. And my books are standalones, so my first book, Brightly Burning, stands alone. It doesn't have a sequel, it's not part of a series, and I needed to pitch ideas for what my second book would be, because I knew I wanted to start writing it this summer, because it's going to be due to my publisher kind of early next year. And I've talked about it in my drafting videos, how it's my first time writing on contract and on deadline, and I've had varying timelines for writing previous books. I wrote Brightly Burning in 3 months, but previously I had written a book in over a year. So I'm shooting for a 6-month timeline on this one, and I felt really good that I had this partnership with my editor. And I bounced ideas off of her, and she picked her favorite, and I was brainstorming and working on it, though I hadn't started writing it. And then I got an email from my agent one Friday morning. I woke up to, "Call me when you get this," and I was like, "Oh no, what's wrong?" I was imagining all sorts of doom and gloom or craziness. Or also, for a second I was like, oh, well, maybe I got a foreign rights offer, but then I was like, no, she'd call you. If she's emailing you, it's bad news. So I called my agent, and it was bad news. My editor was leaving my publisher. But bless my agent, and when you get this kind of unfortunate news, hopefully it does come through your agent, and it is tempered with don't panic because XYZ. And my agent said, don't panic because XYZ. She said, I've already talked to your editor about what's already been done and the plans. At this point, I got this notice before my line edits, and she said, you're done with your content edits. She's going to get you your line edits before she leaves, and you're going to finish, close out the content and line edits with her before she goes. So don't worry about it. You're not going to have to re-edit your book with a new editor. deep breath. That was honestly the first thing that I was worried about. So I'm going to, detour a bit, from telling you the rest of my story to talk about when being orphaned can be really bad. These are all based on real people that I know. So if you're orphaned really early in the process, and as I mentioned, typically when you sell a book, it comes out like 2 years later. It's a very long window. And if you're orphaned really early, so let's say you sell a book in January, and your book is going to come out the 2 Januaries from then. So let's say your book is bought January 2017, and your book is going to come out January 2019. And your editor tells you she's leaving March. They haven't started your content edits with you. They likely have not read your book again and given you your edit letter so that you can work on your content edits, which means you're going to be reassigned at that point in the publishing process to a brand new editor. You're going to be added to their docket of work. Typically, you're reassigned to someone who already works at the publisher, who already has a list of titles that are coming out that they are working on. And most editors are overworked and they work on a lot of titles in a year. And all of a sudden, you are like the red-headed stepchild on another editor's list. They didn't acquire your book. You haven't been, in it from the beginning. And now they are responsible for shepherding you through the process. And it's entirely possible that this new person won't love your book as much as the last person, or they'll like it, but they don't get it, or even they love it, but your visions don't match. And there's all sorts of just troubleshooting that can happen because of this. And this is where you should always, rely on your agent. If you're having concerns or troubles, talk to your agent. Your agent is a middleman for a reason, and they can be bad cops. So if you're just clashing with your new editor, talk to your agent. Or really, anytime you're clashing with your editor, talk to your agent. But also, I have a friend who was orphaned pretty early in her process, and her book was bumped an entire year. So it was supposed to come out 2 years after her book deal, and it was changed to come out 3 years after her book deal, because in reassigning her to a new editor added to an already full list of titles, the editor just didn't have time to slot her in time to get it published on the previously agreed upon schedule. So that's an author who was bumped a whole year. I know people who have been orphaned and they had to re-edit their book because the vision for the new editor was just different. It didn't match, or they contradicted something that the previous editor had them work on. So it just meant starting over on the revision, doing it again. Because I do advise, don't go into a new editor relationship doom and gloom. Because as I said, they may love your book, but their vision doesn't match your previous editors. But that doesn't make the vision bad or the relationship bad. Put your best foot forward and do your best, but talk to your agent if you're worried or scared or there's a problem. But again, I will say, it can turn out okay. I'm okay. And I'm not the only person who is orphaned, of course, in this situation. I have several editor sisters at my imprint, including 2 fellow debuts who also lost our editor. And so we've had very different experiences. So my 2 imprint editor sisters were reassigned immediately to editors who already work at HMH. So they're already working with new people, but they also were at different stages in their book deal. So one person had also already completed all of the edits with Sarah, our editor, and she's been handed to another editor to shepherd her through the rest of her debut year. Different concerns. The other person hadn't, had done their content edits, but I don't think their line edits. So they're being moved to a new person. And in general, we're all having to work with a new person on our subsequent books. And that's where it can be really stressful. So back to me. So my agent reassured me on the call. She said, you don't have a permanent editor reassignment, but in the meantime, you're going to be taken care of by Cat Onder, who is the executive editor at HMH. And Cat used to be an editor at Bloomsbury, and it's so funny, the circle of publishing life. She was the editor for a friend of mine, and I remember when this friend like came to me in GChat and was so sad. She's like, I love my editor and she's leaving me. And now she's my editor. So it's like, oh, well, your loss, my gain. No, that's so dark. That's so savage. But so I'm in really good hands. Even though my editor left, I'm with Cat Onder. She has worked on some amazing books. She worked with Sarah J. Maas on a lot of her books. Cat knows what she's doing, and she's been amazing to work with so far. Like, she's put a lot of my fears at bay. You know, she said some beautiful things about my book over email and on the phone, and you know, I was able to kind of breathe easy because I've been handed over to an editor who loves my book as much as my previous editor. She is my temporary editor, though. As I mentioned, this is a temporary thing because they are going to be hiring a new editor to replace my old editor, and whomever that new person is going to be my editor. So it's like a mystery box somewhere out there in publishing. Maybe you're watching this, you're probably not. Is an editor working somewhere else who's going to get a new job and become my editor. And I cannot wait to meet them. I'm like sitting over here like, who's going to be my new mommy? But not in like that creepy way that like people like call celebrities their mom on Twitter. I find that so strange. No, but in like a book baby way. Like we have this book baby. But whomever this new editor is, they're not really going to work on my first book. When I get this new assignment, they're going to work with me on my second book, so my contract book. But I can't sit around and wait until I have that new person because hiring can take a while. So I had a chat with Kat, my interim editor, about the second book thing. And I knew as soon as I heard that my first editor was leaving that I was probably going to have to repitch. But I hadn't started writing, so that was okay. And that's exactly what I did. I repitched what I was going to work on for my second book to my new interim editor. And she thought that the idea that had been okayed by my previous editor was good because she knew about it. Because that's the thing, when you're reassigned, like, publishers have meetings and they like talk about you. So like they know stuff. So she knew everything. She said, I like that idea, but here's the kind of like things are meant to be thing about it. When I heard that my editor was leaving, like right around that time, like that weekend, I had a really awesome and productive dinner with a writer friend, and we were just kind of like bouncing ideas off each other and talking about books. And I came back to an idea that I had, a classic that I had wanted to adapt in space, but I didn't think I could do it before, or I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know if it was the right idea, but this writer friend really encouraged me, and she said a couple things to me that like pinged my brain. I went, wait, I actually think I have an idea of how to do this. Maybe this will work. Okay, so I started percolating and brainstorming, and then the following week I talked to Kat to repitch her, and I said, well, here is an idea I didn't pitch Sarah on originally that I've been thinking about for like the last week. And I pitched to her and she went, yes, do it. It's perfect. And I was like, I'm kind of glad you agree because I'm kind of in love with it. Yay! So that is Space Angst, the draft that I started in July that I've been working on. So I really think it was meant to be. I think the other idea that was okay that I was brainstorming is good, and I still really like it, but it's kind of sitting in the back of my mind as like a third book now, and I am throwing myself into Space Angst, and I feel really good about it. And it's also, I feel at ease because Kat is the executive editor. She okayed it. So whomever the new person is that comes in, like, this is the book that they're going to edit. Like, this is the book. Whereas initially, like, when I first heard that my editor was leaving, I was like, oh God, what if the new person comes in and I've written a draft and they hate it and I have to start over? Hyperventilating. So I just, everything went as swimmingly as it possibly could. My agent reassured me right away. I had a really, good conversation with Sarah before she left, and she's like, I want to stay in touch, and we have, and I love that. Like, I've been, emailing her and wishing her luck with being an agent and referring clients to her, and it's been awesome. And, I've had great conversations with Kat, and I feel really secure in the book that I'm working on. Also, another thing I hadn't mentioned about timing for being orphaned, this was important for me. It ended up being to my real advantage that I am being crashed, because my book was launched with sales and marketing 1 month after I got my book deal. Now, when you're launched with sales and marketing, that is when your editor basically presents your book to the sales and marketing team for the season that they're working on. It's typically a year out. So the launch at HMH for spring summer 2018 was in May 2017, and my book was launched to get them going and start doing ideas and early reach out and, sending copies out and developing an ARC plan, working on a cover. That's when they first talk about your cover, etc. So my editor, my champion who loves my book, already launched me with sales and marketing prior to her leaving. So I was already kind of like set up with the other teams who are going to be working with my book. And so I was already in a really good position. When she left, she'd already done the work to champion me with those departments. She'd already pitched the cover ideas and gotten me assigned to her favorite art director, and she'd gotten sales and marketing working on their publicity and marketing plans. And so that's another thing that kind of worked to my advantage. Whereas if you're orphaned in a different part of the process, it can be a real bummer to know that the editor who's going to pitch you at launch isn't the editor who acquired your book and loved it. But that said, if you're an author and you've been orphaned in another stage of the process, don't worry. And also, I can only speak from my personal experience and pass on anecdotal experience from other people. If you've had a totally different experience with being orphaned, including early in the process, drop that down in the comments or, talk to me privately. It's really fascinating to kind of share our publishing experiences so that we can compare and contrast. And then if you're an author out there, don't be afraid. This is a very normal thing, and it doesn't have to be the end of the world. So deep breaths. Always rely on your agent, and know that it isn't just one person at a publisher who buys your book and loves your book. They do have to get it through acquisition, so they have to convince a whole room of people to love your book and buy your book. So I found once my editor left that I wasn't alone at my publishing house. Cat had read and loved my book. The marketing and publicity people I've talked to have read and loved my book. So I have a team of people who are on my side at my publisher. And so while I am sad to lose my amazing editor, Sarah, I am really happy for her and the next stage in her career. Seriously, guys, she is going to be an incredible agent, and you should query her. I cannot recommend her highly enough. And I'm getting this incredible experience working with Cat, who is, everyone in the industry loves her. I've only heard amazing things about Cat. And, then I have the exciting next step in my journey of this magical new permanent editor assignment and who it'll be and how we might work together. And I can only focus on the positives and assume that it's going to be really, really awesome. And if it's not, I will share the sugar-coated version of it on my channel. I don't air dirty laundry, but I do share real experiences that happened to me to contextualize kind of the weird things that can happen in publishing. So this is my latest, bump in the road, but it's everything's fine, everything's smooth sailing, and yeah. So hit me up in the comments with any questions, because being orphaned is weird and you might have questions. If you enjoyed this video and this glimpse into my publishing journey, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get a notification when I post a new video. And just everyone, happy writing.